this was a Syriac metropolitan who had fled Palestine after the war between the Israelis, or the Jews, and the Arabs, with a metal trunk that he took to Hoboken, New Jersey, and put under his bed. And when the church, the Syriac church, the Syriacs we've been talking about a lot, ran out of money, he was forced to refinance the church, so he put an advertisement in the Wall Street Journal, scrolls for sale, the ones that he had secreted out of the country in 1948. And all those were finally bought and put in the Israeli museum in a secret way. He says that had he known they were Jews who were buying it, he wouldn't have sold it to them. But I don't think that's true. That's for public consumption. He got $250,000 for them. To go back, these things started appearing on the market in 47, 48. Half of them went to the Metropolitan. Bajent Lee discussed that. Half to the Hebrew University. Then finally the whole catch was in the Israel Museum by 1954. These were all published, open to everybody. No attempt to make monopolies, no attempt to do mind control on them. So we do have some beautiful scrolls, even now, in the open public from the earliest times. And that was that huge interest in the scrolls back in the early 50s. So back in the early 50s, there was this huge interest in the scrolls. What happened to it? I'll tell you what happened to it. A curtain was pulled down, like an iron curtain, over the scrolls for 35 years. And the reason was, okay, the first were published. Those included something called the Isaiah scroll in 2 different copies, which basically confirmed our version of Isaiah is pretty much the accurate one, though there were some differences. A scroll on the prophet Habakkuk, which was a commentary, the most important Dead Sea Scroll. Incredible document in this book here, which has just come out from Element Books, the Dead Sea Scrolls and the First Christians. I give you translations of that Habakkuk commentary on the Habakkuk commentary. I am not the only one, but I give you one that I think is interesting, and some of the other important Dead Sea Scroll documents. So that was there, and that talked about the righteous teacher, his troubles with the liar, his troubles with the wicked priest, and how he was finally killed. So that's how we know all about these individuals. We just don't have them identified. And you know, Habakkuk, if you know Christian theology, is the key text in Pauline theology. Habakkuk 2:4. The righteous shall live by his faith. And as Paul interprets it, that means you live by your faith in Christ Jesus. But on the James side, in the letter of James, James interpreted attacking the person he calls the empty, foolish man, presumably Paul. James, the letter of James says, don't you know that faith without works is dead? It's faith working with works. That's how we are justified. So there's the James position and the Paul position. And they both revolve about Habakkuk 2:4. Ha ha. Guess what's in the Habakkuk commentary? The essence of it. Habakkuk 2:4. Now to me, that's the kind of parameters you bring to bear to try to fit something into an historical situation. These people are writing a commentary about Habakkuk 2:4, which is the building piece of Christian theology according to Romans, Galatians, Hebrews, and the letter of James. And so are the Dead Sea Scrolls. So that, to me, shows contemporaneous mindsets. Well, needless to say, the Qumran interpretation of Habakkuk 2:4 is Jamesian. Now, unfortunately, I come along laterally in the 1980s and have the honor to be the first scholar to ever point that out, which shows you something is really wrong. Why should I, in Timbuktu, in Cal State Donkeyville, have to tell the people at Oxford, Cambridge, and everywhere else what's going on in the scrolls, and how can they miss such self-evident correspondences? Oh, because they choose to miss them, or because their mind doesn't want to recognize them. So we have to go into this editing process, and I'll tell you about it in a moment. Let me show you one other important document. By the way, I also have that in this book, Dead Sea Scrolls and the First Christians, from Element, if you're interested. That is the community rule. How many have heard of the community rule? That was in Cave 1 too. That was in these original jars. These are names that these things came to have in the course of time. The community rule is very well preserved, just like the Habakkuk commentary. So don't think everything is deconstructed. Everything is not deconstructed. There are documents. Some of them are extremely revealing. I have some marks in my book, which I'm not going to be able to get to because I'm going to go to questions pretty soon. But I have some marks in my book that actually zero in on some of these materials, like the War Scroll from Qumran. The War Scroll, which is a document about the final apocalyptic war against all evil on the earth, called the War of the Sons of Light against the Sons of Darkness. And it is not a symbolical war. It is a real war, the prescription for a real war that these holy warriors intend to fight against all evil on the earth. And it's quite frightening. But this is an extremely militant group. They have a very apocalyptic mindset. Now, they're not so stupid to think that they're going to be able to either conquer the whole world or meet the might of Rome in battle. But they have a secret weapon. What is the secret weapon according to the War Scroll? If they're perfectly holy, now I know it's crazy, and I know we wouldn't try it, but if they're perfectly holy, and they observe the commands of all righteousness, which is going to explain to you what this extreme purity is all about, and this Nazaritism from their mother's wombs, that goes into Nazaraeanism, that goes into Nazareth in Christianity, but originally was Nazaritism in the scrolls and elsewhere, and only becomes Nazareth, which didn't really exist, as I think one of your previous speakers told you, becomes Nazareth a geographical place name in order to render it harmless, to defang it, to geographicalize it and make it basically harmless, render it harmless, to pacify this extremely aggressive militant. I'm not recommending extremely aggressive messianism, which is why Paulinism, for some folks, is better, or at least more attractive, with all its faults. But I don't mind which is more attractive. As I said, you make of this material what you will, how you release yourselves if you're interested. I'm not judging who's better or who's worse. What we only want to know is what happened, what occurred, what is the truth about this period. And that's where things like the War Scrolls help us. So they thought that if they were perfectly holy, the heavenly host would come down from heaven and fight on their side. And the heavenly host for them, the host of heavenly angels, was like a huge, massive